First, we welcome back Bukola Oriola, a survivor of human trafficking and domestic abuse. We first met Bukola 2 years ago after she wrote her first book, In Prison, The Travails of a Trafficked Victim, where she shared her story of being trafficked and assaulted by her then husband while being kept in isolation. She had a child and later sought help and escaped. She's since started a nonprofit and shares her story around the world in hopes of helping others in similar situations. Her new book, A Living Label, is out now and focuses on her advocacy of other human trafficking survivors, and she's here to talk about it. Bukola, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So in your last book, you talked about your story of survival, and how did you go from such a dark place to wanting to move that into a positive way to help others?
I think it's grace. It's the grace of God for me to have moved from a dark place to the light now, where I've been able to turn my story around for good. I don't think I would have been able to do it without the omnipotent power of God upon my life to be able to do that, because it wasn't a good experience and I thought that death was going to be the way out for me. But going through that and overcoming that is not an ordinary thing, and it's not something that I did by my own power. I believe that the power of God was present with me to be able to do that, going from that dark spot to the light.
And you called your new book, A Living Label, a solution for nonprofits and government agencies. Where do you see them falling short as far as human trafficking?
Oh, there are various kinds of gaps in the system. There are gaps in the services that are being provided. So the solution is filling those gaps. For example, where a nonprofit wants a survivor to come and share her story, which happens all the time to survivors across the country and even outside of the country. Come share your story, forgetting that this person is a human being and this person has emotions. And what has happened to this person is not a good thing. And this person is also a survivor of trauma. So how do we still elevate that person without making that person go back to the trauma all over again? Because for a survivor, when you share your story again and again, it serves two purposes. On one hand, you are getting healed. On the other hand, you are also bringing triggers. So how to help survivors not to keep getting the trigger is to help by empowering survivors. And that is one of the main solutions I've brought to the government and non-profit and even community members who want to work with survivors. Think for a minute about empowerment and think about how you want to empower a survivor. And one of the main ways is economic empowerment. So, for example, you want this person to come and speak at your event, also provide remuneration for the person's expenses and labor.
Okay. And when you speak to groups and tell your story, is it still a painful story to tell? And how do you overcome that pain to deliver a strong message?
Yes, it is. And I will say that it's a lifetime pain. It's not a pain that we go. The reason is because I didn't know that it's going to be a lifetime pain for me. And I came to that realization myself last September when I went to Nigeria. And while I was there speaking, I find myself breaking down. And then I said to myself, this is going to be a lifetime pain. I just need to deal with it. And I think that is helpful for me because, you know, thinking about this as something I have to live with the rest of my life helps me to learn how to cope with it.
And you're a member of the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. How did it feel to join that, and what do you hope to accomplish?
I'm humbled and honored to be appointed to be on the council, even to be selected, because, and I talked about it in my new book, I thought it was a scam when I got the email from the White House. And I was wondering, okay, who knows me at the White House to be sending me email? And when I found out that it was the truth, you know, it was humbling. For weeks I was crying because, you know, I was crying about where I came from, the dark point of my life where I thought death was the only way out for me. And now here to this honorable platform to lend my voice for other survivors. I think it's a great opportunity, not only for me, I see it as something that provides hope for other survivors that are still out there to know that regardless of what happened to them, they can still turn their lives around.
What do you feel are some of the biggest misconceptions about human trafficking?
The biggest one is that human trafficking is only sex. That is why it's important also for media to start shedding light on the issue of labor trafficking and even organ trafficking. People, when you talk about human trafficking, the first thing that comes to mind is sex. People don't think about labor trafficking. And labor trafficking is also prevalent. It's just that it's harder to see because somebody is not at a motel. You're not going to do a bust at your neighbor's house, except you have really been watching and know something is not right. So I think that misconception is that human trafficking is just sex trafficking. People need to learn that human trafficking is more than sex. Sex is just one form of human trafficking. There is labor trafficking and there is even organ trafficking.
And you mentioned that people have received help because of your story. What are some examples of that, and how has that felt to be able to be a part of that?
Yes, people have received help, and I've even had organizations contacting me to talk to a survivor or a victim just so they can believe. The reason is because as a victim, your trust has been so bashed that you don't trust anybody. If somebody is even telling you have help for you, you're not going to believe that person because the person who exploited you in the first place was somebody you trusted. And it's now hard to trust somebody again. So from my story, a lot of them have been able to believe that they can get help. And they've reached out for help in Minnesota and outside of Minnesota. And I do always talk about a particular victim who happened to be my customers. And that is why I really loved an article I saw on Facebook yesterday about Illinois coming up with a new law for hair braiders, where if you notice domestic violence, you have to report, and I think that is great. Beyond domestic violence, even when you suspect human trafficking, as a hair braider, you have to report. So just so everybody is actively involved. And I do have a client who came to me because then I braided hair. And I didn't know she was a victim until she read my book. And then she called me at 6 a.m. to ask, Bukola, I thought she was calling to make her appointment, but on the contrary, she was calling to ask Bukola, those people that helped you, can they help me? And, I was happy that my story could help that kind of a person. And right now she's working at the Mayo Clinic. So, and there are other people in other parts of the country who have heard my story that have been referred to me and I've spoken to, and they've been able to get help.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Wow. And just where can people find the new book?
The new book now is online. Just Google A Living Label and you will find it. Right now it's selling on lulu.com.
It's great to see so many people getting help through your story.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.